Right now, as you hear this, United States Central Command has confirmed it struck more than 90 Iranian military targets on Karg Island, the 5-mile stretch of land off Iran's southern coast, through which 90% of the country's crude oil exports pass. CENTCOM stated that U.S. forces successfully struck those targets while preserving the oil infrastructure. President Donald Trump said Friday night the U.S. totally obliterated every military target on the island and threatened to attack the oil infrastructure itself if Tehran continues blocking ships from traversing the Strait of Hormuz. That threat is not hypothetical. It is a loaded weapon pointed at the economic heart of the Islamic Republic. And what happened in the hours that followed tells you everything about where this war is heading. Iran pressed on with sustained missile and drone attacks across the Gulf region, with Tehran strikes targeting Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. In the UAE's Fujairah Emirate, a fire broke out at a major bunkering hub after debris fell during the interception of a drone. The retaliation is not slowing, it is widening, and by the time you finish listening to this, you will understand exactly why the next 72 hours could reshape the entire Middle East. This war did not begin overnight. Beginning in late January 2026, the United States carried out its largest military buildup in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq, deploying air, naval, and missile defense assets amid escalating tensions with Iran. The scale of what was assembled is staggering. In mid-January, USS Abraham Lincoln was ordered to CENTCOM's area of operations and arrived on January 26th with its strike group, including guided missile destroyers, cruisers, support vessels, and embarked aircraft such as F/A, 18E, Super Hornets, EEA, 18G Growlers, E-2 Hawkeyes, MH-60 helicopters, and F-35C Lightning IIs. The F/A 18E Super Hornet, the Hornet, is the backbone of carrier-based air power. It carries precision-guided munitions, anti-radiation missiles, and can operate day or night in contested airspace. The F-35C Lightning II, the Lightning, is the Navy's stealth strike fighter. Radar cannot reliably track it. It was designed for exactly this mission, penetrating advanced air defense networks and eliminating them. On February 13th, sources stated that USS Gerald R. Ford was en route to the Middle East, creating an uncommon two-carrier deployment in the theater. Reports from multiple outlets noted this concentration of air and naval assets constituted one of the most significant force postures in the region since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Two-carrier strike groups. That is not deterrence. That is capacity. More than 330 U.S. military aircraft were positioned in the region, spread across Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan, and Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. Think about that number: 330 combat and support aircraft. The buildup included carrier air wings 8 and 9 aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln and USS Gerald R. Ford. Guardiot. In the days before the strikes, an additional 40 C-17 and C-5 logistics flights arrived in the CENTCOM area, bringing the total to an estimated 310 flights since early January to assemble the Air Force, alongside Patriot and Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Missile Defense Systems. The THAAD system, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, is built to intercept ballistic missiles during their terminal phase. It exists for one purpose: to kill incoming warheads. It was deployed because the Pentagon knew what was coming back. On February 24th, it was reported that 12 F-22 Raptor fighter jets had been deployed to Avda Air Base in southern Israel. This was the first U.S. deployment of offensive weaponry in Israel. The F-22 Raptor, the most advanced air dominance fighter on Earth. It has never been deployed offensively on Israeli soil before this conflict. That alone tells you the threshold that was crossed. Beyond the Middle East, another 113 aircraft, including 13 F-22s, 48 F-35As, 40 F-15E Strike Eagles and 12 F-16ES were positioned at European bases, primarily RAF Lakenheath in the UK. Every lane was covered, every contingency accounted for. And then the order came. Operation Epic Fury, the U.S. code name for its joint military operations with Israel against Iran, began on February 28, 2026. CENTCOM led the operation. In its statement, CENTCOM said U.S. and Israeli forces had begun striking targets to dismantle the Iranian regime's security apparatus, prioritizing locations that posed an imminent threat, including IRGC command and control facilities, air defense capabilities, missile and drone launch sites, and military airfields. The opening salvo was surgical and devastating. On February 28th, Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, was assassinated. Iranian state media announced his death on March 1st. His daughter, son-in-law, grandchild, and daughter-in-law were also killed in the strikes. The decapitation strike worked. The most powerful figure in Iranian politics for 35 years was dead within hours of the first bombs falling. But Iran did not collapse. It hit back hard. Soon after the U.S. and Israel launched their first strikes, Iran carried out retaliatory attacks targeting Israel and U.S. military bases in Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates. Some of the strikes also hit civilian areas, including hotels and airports, as well as oil and gas infrastructure. 6 U.S. soldiers were killed by an Iranian strike on a command center in Kuwait. 6 American service members dead. That number has not received the attention it deserves. By March 5th, a military source told Fars news agency that Iran had fired over 500 ballistic and naval missiles and almost 2,000 drones since February 28th. Almost 60% were fired towards U.S. targets in the region. 500 missiles, 2,000 drones directed at American positions. That is not a token response. That is a full-spectrum retaliatory campaign. The Pentagon says the counterattack is degrading. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said joint U.S.-Israeli strikes had significantly diminished Iran's military capabilities and that Iran's missile volume is down 90% and drone volume down 95%. If those numbers hold, Iran's offensive punch is approaching exhaustion. Military analysts with knowledge of Iranian doctrine warn that this creates one of 2 scenarios. Either Tehran negotiates from a position of diminished capability, or it escalates asymmetrically before its remaining stockpiles run dry. That second scenario is what keeps CENTCOM planners awake at 3 in the morning. CENTCOM on Thursday said that American forces have struck roughly 6,000 targets inside Iran since the war began. More than 60 Iranian ships and over 30 mine layers have also been eliminated. 6,000 targets in 14 days. The Iranian Navy and Air Force have been wiped out, and soon Israel and the U.S. will have complete control of Iranian skies, according to the Pentagon. Complete control. That phrase carries enormous weight. It means no Iranian fighter jet is getting off the ground. No naval vessel is leaving port. The Islamic Republic's conventional military has been functionally destroyed. But the IRGC is not a conventional military. It is an ideological army built for asymmetric warfare, and it is using the one weapon the U.S. cannot easily counter, the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait, a major maritime choke point for global energy trade, has experienced ongoing disruption since February 28th, following the joint strikes. In response, Iran launched retaliatory attacks, and the IRGC issued warnings prohibiting vessel passage, leading to an effective halt in shipping traffic. Crude tanker transits through the strait dropped to 4 vessels on March 1st, compared with an average of 24 per day. 3 of the 4 were Iran-flagged. Around 200 internationally trading crude and product tankers are effectively stranded in the Gulf. 200 tankers stuck, not moving. That is the energy equivalent of a global heart attack. The IRGC says it will not allow a liter of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. A spokesperson for the IRGC's Khattam al-Anbiya headquarters said any vessel linked to the United States, Israel, or their allies will be considered a legitimate target. That is not rhetoric. At least 16 oil tankers, cargo ships, and other vessels have been attacked in and around the Strait of Hormuz, the Arabian Gulf, and the Gulf of Oman since the war began, according to the UK's Maritime Agency. Ships are burning. This is not a theoretical blockade. It is an active shooting gallery. Now look at what that means for you. U.S. gas prices have spiked by 23% since the war began, according to AAA. 23% in 2 weeks. Brent crude futures were priced at over $101 as of Thursday. Brent is up 41.5% since the war began. U.S. crude oil has surged 47%. If you are filling your tank right now, you are paying the price of this war every single time you pull up to the pump. And it could get worse. Far worse. The IRGC spokesperson stated expect oil at $200 per barrel. If that number materializes, gasoline in the United States crosses $6 a gallon in most states. That is not an analyst's projection. That is basic math. The International Energy Agency's March report stated the war in the Middle East is creating the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market, with crude and oil product flows through the strait plunging from around 20 million barrels per day to a trickle and limited capacity to bypass the waterway. Gulf countries have cut total oil production by at least 10 million barrels per day. 10 million barrels per day. Gone. That is not a disruption. That is an amputation. More than 30 nations agreed to release 400 million barrels of oil from emergency reserves, with the U.S. leading with 172 million barrels from its Strategic Petroleum Reserve. It is the largest release of stockpiled oil in the 50-year history of the International Energy Agency. And it is not enough. Tankers are under attack in the Persian Gulf. The strait remains basically closed, and Iran's new supreme leader has vowed to keep the choke point shut. Goldman Sachs modeled a scenario where oil averages $110 in March and April. They see inflation at 3.3% and raise their odds of a U.S. recession this year by 5 percentage points to 25%. Oxford Economics modeled a scenario where global oil prices average $140 a barrel for 2 months, which they characterized as a breaking point for the world economy. That would be enough to push the Eurozone, the UK, and Japan into economic contraction, a quarter chance of American recession, an outright certainty of European recession if this continues through April. Those are the stakes, not in some distant future, right now. Iran's new supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the man killed on the first day of the war, issued his first public statement demanding the immediate closure of all U.S. military bases in the Middle East and insisting the Strait of Hormuz must remain closed. He was elected on March 8th to replace his father. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said he believes Mojtaba Khamenei is wounded and likely disfigured. The U.S. Department of State offered a $10 million reward for information about him and other top officials. If the new supreme leader is injured, that means Israeli and American targeting teams know roughly where he is, or where he was. That level of intelligence penetration is extraordinary. It suggests human sources deep inside the Iranian command structure, and it means no one at the top of the Iranian government can feel safe. Not in a bunker, not in a basement, not anywhere. The nuclear dimension of this conflict remains the most dangerous variable. According to the IAEA, Iran holds 440.9 kilograms of uranium enriched up to 60% purity, a short technical step from weapons-grade levels of 90%. Grossi has previously said that while such material does not mean Iran has a nuclear weapon, it could, in theory, be sufficient for multiple bombs if further enriched. 440 kilograms, enough for multiple devices. On March 3rd, the IAEA confirmed that while recent bombings had failed to destroy the Natanz nuclear facility, the significant damage to its entrance buildings had made it inaccessible. The facility is underground. It survived the bombs, but no one can get in. not the Iranians, not the inspectors, not anyone. The IAEA has not had access to Iran's previously declared inventories of enriched uranium for more than 8 months, making their verification long overdue. The agency cannot provide assurances regarding the non-diversion of nuclear material from peaceful activities. 8 months. No verification. No one on Earth can confirm what Iran has done with that uranium. That is the most dangerous sentence in this entire report. CENTCOM has published video showing B-2 Spirit bombers taking off for raids on Iran, flying global nonstop missions from their home base at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. America's stealth bombers have targeted Iran's missile caves. These facilities are built deep under mountains and are primarily used for storage, but some of them actually have the ability to launch ballistic missiles through apertures in their ceilings. The B-2 Spirit, a stealth bomber capable of carrying 40,000 pounds of precision-guided munitions. It can fly from Missouri to Iran and back without landing, without being detected, without warning. And it has been doing exactly that for 14 days straight. The GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, a 30,000-pound bunker buster, is the weapon designed to reach facilities like Natanz and Fordo. Military analysts with knowledge of the mission profile believe the B-2s are carrying exactly that payload. If true, the United States is actively trying to crack open mountains. Defense Secretary Hegseth approved a request from CENTCOM for an amphibious ready group and attached Marine Expeditionary Unit. The supplemental forces include up to 5,000 personnel and several warships, including the USS Tripoli, which is on its way from its home port in Sasebo, Japan. The Tripoli Amphibious Ready Group includes the America-class amphibious assault ship, USS Tripoli, the San Antonio-class amphibious transport dock,